Hello, all. Sique here, and welcome back to the Path to Unpunishable, where today we are starting card 17, the Untethered. And this is really hard to describe, other than you just feel like someone just cut you loose. It's how I describe the liminal space, the space between where you were, where your nervous system was, and before you are truly calm and settled and grounded. And I talked about this space before, but liminal spaces happen a lot more than we recognize. And usually that's where anxiety sets in. And well, yeah, it's a moment after you cut the rope and then nothing rushes in to replace it, right? There's no applause, there's no booing, there's no disaster, just a quiet, weightless pause. And the ground that you usually sunk your toes into is gone, but you're not falling, right? You're kind of suspended. And that sensation can be disorienting. Your body expects a consequence. Your mind looks for a signal that tells you what happens next. Instead, there's just like air and space in you. And you've released what's once held you in place. And the world hasn't fallen apart. And you're kind of like, okay. And this is the Untethered. And it's not freedom as in celebration of we're free at last. No, this is freedom as unfamiliar physics, right? You didn't know gravity moved this way. It's a moment where power has been exercised, but your nervous system isn't quite with you. It hasn't caught up yet. And it may not even know that it exists or agree with you or think this is the right move yet. And this matters because the sensation of suspension that follows an act of will, follows you making that cut, follows you making that decision and standing firm no matter the consequences. It feels wrong, even when it's healthy. When you refuse obedience, complicity, or submission to people who believe they are entitled to it, the absence of immediate punishment can feel unnatural. And many of us are trained to expect correction, right? Admonishment. And when it doesn't arrive, the silence itself becomes unsettling. And this is a liminal space. You are no longer who you were when compliance was your safety strategy, but you are not yet fully who you are once your nervous system has recalibrated and others have learned how to treat you. The people will learn to adapt, some willingly and some under protest. Either way, this transition period just feels unstable. The Untethered appears after the stone spine, the ink truth, and the compass because it names the aftermath of choosing yourself. You're upright, you're honest, you know your direction. Now you must survive the unfamiliar sensation of not being controlled. Everything may feel out of place for a while, but that does not mean that you made the wrong choice. With your orientation intact, recovery becomes faster. Avoiding unnecessary pain is wise, but some pain is inevitable, and learning how to recover is the goal. There's a lot of stories I could tell in this portion of the card, but, well, actually, there is one I'm going to tell. When I moved out on my own, one thing that got me is that I would hear my mother screaming my name. And I knew that I lived alone and she wasn't there, but I would still hear it and it would make me stop. It would make me like freeze in place. And then I realized she wasn't there and I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know how to react. And it took a while for me to make this realization. And that's where all the stories I could tell you comes down to the same thing. As an adult, you can't get in trouble, right? You can't get in trouble with another adult for making a lawful, moral, personal choice. You just can't. That statement alone unsettles a lot of people who rely on hierarchy, approval, or fear to maintain control. And I'm not saying that you're not going to lose face. You can. And for some people, that loss is worse than death. And yes, people who wanted access to your labor, attention, or obedience may retaliate. They may gossip, obstruct, or withdraw support. You may gain critics, enemies, or what the internet politely calls haters. But none of that is punishment in the way they intended to be. And like, it's not like you're grounded. Especially if you build your life in a way where they cannot affect it. And once you build a life that does not depend on external validation, the mechanisms that people use to discipline you stop working. Like I said, they can't ground you, they can't revoke your autonomy, or send you back to a place you no longer live. They can't put you in timeout. They can disapprove, they can be loud, they can be cruel. What they cannot do is put you in trouble, quote unquote. And the first time this clicks, it feels like floating. Not triumph, not revenge, just a strange, buoyant disbelief. The expected blow just doesn't land, right? Even though they're swinging, even though they're giving all their effort, when it hits, it just vibrates through your body. And there's nothing. There's a silence after that boundary they try to break stretches longer than anticipated, but it holds. And that feeling eventually becomes joy, but it doesn't happen immediately. At first, it feels strange and unreal. The Untethered teaches you to tolerate that unreality long enough for it to actually feel like freedom. How does this look like through the lens? Well, the Untethered requires the lens because power without grounding can easily turn into avoidance or cruelty. And so empathy keeps you from mistaking freedom for superiority, right? While they can't put you in trouble, it doesn't mean you just can do any old thing, right? You remember that others may still be tethered in ways you are not, and you have to keep that in mind. And truth prevents you from rewriting history to justify the harm done in your wake. And I'm going to sit with that for a minute, because there are ways when you sit up there and exert your independence, there's a lot of times and a lot of circumstances that those people will take it out on someone else and then blame you. And you have to be aware of that. And you have to acknowledge the damage that standing your ground may do. It doesn't mean that you are wrong, and it doesn't mean that you backtrack. It means that you have to acknowledge it and understand and communicate the gravity of what has happened. You have to be honest about what you chose and why. This is another reason why this is after the compass. Now, kindness governs how you move while untethered. Just because you can leave does not mean you must wound. All right? You don't use this time, and you don't use your lack of pain when that strike comes as a way to damage people. You just use it as a buffer to get further away and to get further grounded. And joy becomes the signal that your nervous system is beginning to understand safety without submission. We're going to talk about this more in the next card, the pulse. But your body feels a certain way when it's safe and it's grounded. Anti-greed prevents you from replacing one form of control with another, whether it's through hoarding resources, influence, or moral authority, or proclaimed moral authority. The lens ensures that untethering is not escaping, but is the transition it's supposed to be. It keeps the work relational rather than extractive, because without it, freedom spoils and curdles into isolation. But with it, the untethering becomes a step towards coherence rather than exile. And so what does this card teach? Well, the Untethered teaches that the absence of punishment does not mean danger is imminent. It means the rules have changed. And this card invites the listener to sit with the discomfort of not being managed, to resist the urge to create familiar constraints just to feel oriented again. Once again, this is why it's after the compass. It asks you to notice how often you mistake anxiety for intuition, how quickly you assume that you have done something wrong simply because there's no one there to correct you. It sounds crazy, it sounds ironic, but you'll be surprised how many people think, well, no one's coming and saying anything, am I doing it right? It's quite relatable. The Untethered teaches nervous system literacy. Right? Learn the difference between fear that protects and fear that preserves old hierarchies. This card also teaches patience, because this is not something that happens instantly, nor is it something that resolves instantly. Even though suspension is not temporary, you're not meant to live in midair forever. But rushing to reattach yourself to something, especially something harmful, just to end the discomfort, defeats the entire purpose of the path. The work is to let your body learn that you are safe without permission. And it takes longer than you think, truly. On this path to unpunishable, the untethered marks the moment when punishment loses its leverage, but your identity hasn't fully caught up yet. You're no longer governable in the old ways, but you're still learning what the new ways are and how to kind of stick that landing. That said, it doesn't promise that it's going to be easy. It promises that once you stick it and land it, it's permanent. You can't reverse it. Once you understand that lawful self-direction cannot be punished in the way you were taught to fear, something inside you just shifts and moves and clicks into place. Control mechanisms fail, and fear no longer produces obedience. You may still face consequences. You may still experience loss, but punishment, as a tool for shaping you, is done. It is finished. And the untethered is a quiet confirmation of that truth. And with that, I'd like to leave you with this image. Picture yourself suspended in air and warm water. Rather than scrambling, you're just something like the salt flats or in warm water in a jacuzzi, somewhere where your limbs kind of bubble up on their own. The ground has not yet returned. But even though it hasn't, may you trust this pause. May your body learn what your mind already knows. May you resist the urge to reattach yourself to once was restrained and was restraining you. And when you land, and you will, may it be on the ground that you choose. Amen. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.